So, man, this is awesome. This was, I have to say, like, this is a little bit overwhelming for me. I kind of, a couple people asked, hey, would you do this for the summer? And I was like, sure, let's try. And, all you crazy people started saying, like, hey, I want to write a book. So I thought maybe we'd have like 2 or 3 people, and next thing you know, it's a whole little community here. So it's gonna be fun. I think we're gonna have a great time, and I'm very excited to get to share the journey with you, and for most importantly, you guys to meet one another. So let me walk you through a few things tonight. I'm gonna run through a few slides, and then we're gonna do introductions, and then tell you about a little bit more about what's coming, and then we'll kind of do a workshop here at the end. So I love this picture, and I love starting out this like little session together with this picture because I talked to all of you, and there was many people said something similar, like, it sounds a little crazy, I'm a little bit nervous, and I think this picture is how probably we should all feel a little bit. We're just about to go over, and it's going to be awesome, but a little bit terrifying, and all good things are a bit. So this is sort of what we're going to run through tonight. I'll do a quick little welcome, share a couple things, and I'll tell you guys a little bit of the story behind kind of why I'm doing this, how it came to be. Then we'll do around the horn introductions, have everyone introduce themselves, a little bit about them, their book, those things. Then I'll take you through kind of what's to expect, what's coming, and at the end of this, we'll do a mini workshop. And if I'm any good at this, I should get you out of here within the 1 hour. This will be the one for sure. So usually these sessions will probably be a little more, probably 10 or 15 or 20 minutes of kind of like lecturing or discussions or whatever it is, and mostly workshop. This one will be a little bit shorter on the workshop side, but we'll do what we can. So if you signed up to write a book and see if we can get this thing published by April, you're in the right place. If instead you're looking to learn about accounting or something, you're in the wrong place. So this is book writing, and my goal is to get every one of you to be able to have a book in your hand by next April. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but I'll tell you a little of the story of kind of why I'm doing this, how I got here, and sort of what this all meant. I shared this with some of you guys, but it has been sort of a whirlwind last couple of years, and I'm glad to have Franklin with me because he was part of the very second group of authors I ever got to do this with. So for me, this started a little bit by accident, I guess I would say. I have spent my life as an entrepreneur. I got the chance to teach at Georgetown, which still shocks me. Like, why would they want me to teach there? But here we are. And so I started teaching, and it was fun, but I found it to be like pretty unfulfilling after a bit. Like, it felt like all this work that everyone would do, and then at the end of the semester, like, poof, it just all vanished. The only thing was left was a grade. And so I wanted to do something that actually like left something beyond it mattered. And so I thought about my own life a little bit, and sort of as luck would have it, when I was in my 20s, I had gotten the chance to write and publish 2 books. Now, these weren't bestsellers, I didn't make any money, but the process for me was huge. It sort of opened all these doors. And so I decided to walk into the class a couple weeks later and say, everyone is writing books. And the students looked at me like I was a little bit crazy, and I probably was. But what they didn't know is that I had actually spent the prior month or so interviewing all these authors and asking them, what did they do differently on their second book? What were the things that helped them succeed? And what I learned was really powerful. It sort of defined the entire thing. And it really was defined by 3 big things. Number one, they didn't do it alone. They always had a community of other authors that they had plugged into and they could share their stories with. The second thing is they had help. They had an editor they worked with much earlier. They got feedback much, much earlier. And third, they sort of had a process. They knew what it was like and they could do that one. And so when I went into teaching this, I realized like we had to do the same thing. And so over the last 2 years, I've helped more than 150 authors publish, and another 200 plus will publish this year through this kind of community-driven experience. And so some of you may have asked me this question, which is like, Eric, this is like a ton of work. You just had a newborn. Like, why the hell are you doing this? And my honest answer is that I saw how powerful this is, and I've realized like it is really powerful. We won this gigantic award with, this is the most innovative pedagogy. And when I went to faculty members and said, hey, like you should teach this at your school and all these sorts of things, I got this like response back, which is like, well, students shouldn't write books. They don't know anything. And I realized that this is not going to happen unless we learn and we iterate, and eventually we have this more places. So my goal with this one, and you all are guinea pigs, is in some ways to learn what it's like to teach this as almost like we'll call it a graduate level class. Like, what is it like if we get a group of people together who are all in their careers at midpoint. Most of you are kind of midpoint career-wise, and do this group-based learning. And so that's kind of what I'm doing here, is trying to use you as guinea pigs to see how it is. And don't trust me, I've done this before. It's not my first rodeo with people who are seasoned, but I've never done it as a formal program in this way. So that's kind of why. And the biggest lesson that I want to show is that this number can be beaten. So I shared this with some of you, but the data is pretty stark. Like only 2% of people that start books ever finish. 2%, which is crazy to think about a little bit. But I understand why. I mean, it's a hard process oftentimes, especially alone. And so typically what we've seen is 85 to 90% of people that start finish. And so we're going to use this to show that this is possible. And again, my goal is, if we play our cards right, is this is you in April. It's your book to make this sort of thing happen. So that's really the goal here. And we'll see how this adventure plays out. But I'm excited. And I have to say, if we do this well, you guys will get to meet some other crazy people doing this, have some interesting learnings. There'll be moments of doubts along the way, don't worry, but we'll make this thing happen. And as you sort of heard me share, this is solvable. You just have to sort of play along the way. And for any of you who've met me before and know me personally, I will do whatever I can to drag you over the line if you get stuck at midpoint. So if you ever feel stuck, just holler at me and I will make this happen for you. So let's do a quick round of introductions here. I think you guys are going to spend the next 20 weeks with each other and hopefully beyond. So quickly, let's go around the horn. I'm actually going to start with Franklin, since he's the old hat here, and he's going to be helping me with some of the sessions a little bit going forward. So I have two former students, authors of mine, who sort of helped make this thing happen, Jasmine and Franklin. But for introduction, your name, where you're from, and kind of like a quick overview of sort of what you're hoping to explore with your book a little bit here. So Franklin, why don't I start with you, since you're going to be helping with a few things along the way, and then I'll call people and we'll harass around the way. So Franklin, you want to give us a quick introduction?
Sure, I'd love to. Hi, everyone. My name is Franklin. I'm currently based in New York City, but I'm originally from LA. So my current book project is called Harvard to Homeless, and it's based on the idea that people, homelessness is a big issue worldwide right now, internationally as well. And I am actually converting, I recently bought a van, a Sprinter van, and I'm converting it into a mobile home. And my book is a proposal to society suggesting that maybe creating mobile homes might be a solution to solving part of the homelessness rates throughout the world. So I am very excited to be on this journey with all of you. I actually joined, I think I was probably the first graduate student to kind of join Eric's class. I joined very late. I was about to graduate from my master's, and one day I learned about Eric's class, and I just emailed him out of the blue, and I was like, Eric, I'm really interested in this class. I can't take any more classes because I already signed up for everything. Can I just audit your course? And then he emails me back and he says, oh, your homework is due, this is what you have to do for tonight, because I emailed him on Sunday, and then on Monday he responded back and he's like, this is what you need to do. And no mention of whether that was okay or if it wasn't. It was just just come in, and I did. And the rest is really history. It's just so amazing. I remember around the end, around April, Eric sat down with me and he was like, Franklin, at the rate that you're writing, you're not going to finish. And I was just like, oh, shoot, I got to really sit down and get this done. And it was so important that I finished this book. I will let all of you guys know that my current project, converting my van into a mobile home, it wouldn't have happened without the publication of my first book, The Art of Napping. It was about how sleep deprivation is a problem in East Asia and throughout the world, and how the napping industry that started in Japan was sort of expanding all throughout the world. And it was the first time I really explored about how socioeconomic disparities were forcing some people to work 2 or 3 jobs. They lacked sleep, which meant they were less productive in the workplace. And it was sort of my take on how we should solve societal problems. And I think that lots of you guys have great ideas. I'm really excited to hear where you guys are sort of coming from. And I really think that Eric really helped pull that out of me, which helped me develop my future projects. So
awesome. Yeah, excited to have you, Franklin. And again, Franklin will be helping. This was not possible without having the help of Jasmine and Franklin. They'll kind of help facilitate part of this so that we can make this all happen. So thanks to Franklin. So now why don't we start with you, and we'll just do quick ones, to share a little bit about your where you're from, and then kind of what you're trying to explore with your book.
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Anand Matrilla. I'm originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but currently based in Baltimore. Doing a 2-year fellowship out here centered around startups and emerging economies. The book I'm hoping to write kind of explores the topics around space exploration that we don't usually consider. So how does space exploration and space faring nations, how do they then interact with human right violations? How do they interact with property rights? How do they interact with space conflict? And I'm hoping to use pop culture and even like Star Wars or Star Trek to explore these nuanced ideas and maybe bring a different sort of conversation to space exploration and colonialism and astroeconomics.
Love it. Awesome. Caroline, how about you?
Hey, can y'all hear me okay? All right. My name is Caroline O'Neill. I am from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm really excited about this class. The book that I want to write about is about my mom founding a school for kids with learning disabilities. And I am just really hoping that people will know about that and just see encouragement through that. And I just really I think it's really important for people to know about the school and so basically that. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you. Valerie, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name's Val. I'm excited, but also kind of scared to go on this journey. A lot of questions, a lot of doubt, but also excited that I'll be part of a community that will support each other along the way. I'm based in Stamford, Connecticut. So I'm about a 45-minute train ride from New York City. I am hoping to write a book where I research organizations, and I'm really interested in great cultures and what makes up a great culture in an organization. So hopefully by doing the research, I can come up with the 7 or 8 elements that are essential to a great culture, what I would like to call on beat. So my background, what I'm hoping to do with the book is also to incorporate dance elements, because I do have a dance background, into our conversations around culture and what does it mean to have a great culture at work.
Awesome. Love it. Denise, how about you?
Sorry, it took me a second to get off mute.
No worries.
I'm Denise Siebert. I'm based in Chicago. I'm really excited too, but every now and then I think, what have I got myself into?
That'll keep happening. Don't you worry.
Great. But my book I want to write is a little bit about the fact that if you talk to anyone in the design or creative industry, most of them will talk about how they ended up in their field by accident or by stumbling into it over 3 different career types. And so I want to help with educating people that there are careers in the creative field, that right brain, there's things that you can do if you're a very right brain person, and kind of focus on different ways that you could bring that out in people.
Love it. Awesome.
As well.
Awesome. Melly, how about you?
Natalie?
Hello.
Yes.
My name is. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What's your name?
Natalie.
Oh.
Natalie. Oh, shoot. Did you say Melly or Natalie?
Melly, you're up.
Okay,
Sorry.
great. Okay, no, it's okay. It's okay. All right, my name's Melly Napolitano, and I am planning on writing a book about immigration policy. I would like to write it about immigration policy in the last 20 years and focus on, this is a really hot topic issue right now. It's in the media all the time, and people feel really strongly one way or the other about it. But we actually, a lot of time the consequences are different than what was intended. So I'd like to get a closer look at the data and explore really the results of the past 20 years of policy. The issue
we're gonna have to keep going, so we gotta get out through. So sorry. We'll have time at the end. Everyone will get a chat with each other in groups. So sorry, we'll just keep them coming along. No worry. Molly, how about you now?
Hi, I'm Molly. I'm from Detroit, but I'm currently in Philadelphia, but I'm moving to New York, so it's kind of a mess. I was going to write about something else and I changed it. So right now I want to write about the myth of these traditional girly jobs that a million girls will pay for these jobs in fashion and music and entertainment and social media, influencer jobs. But at the end of the day, when Instagram dies and you lose all your followers, what's next? And if your career is built on something that's like, Instagram followers, it's so ridiculous. So I really want to explore that because I think it's really contributing right now to the wage gap, and it's crazy out there. So
ooh, I love it. Very cool. Patrick, how about you, sir?
Hey everyone, Patrick Finnegan. I am originally from Los Angeles, but currently live in Manhattan in New York. I am just 2 years out of college, so I went to Georgetown, so that's how I know Professor. My book topic that I'm looking to explore, I'm a passionate sports fan, and I'm very interested in seeing the common threads among sports executives under the age of 40. That's a new kind of development where younger people are getting in executive positions. So I'm looking to explore that and how that plays into and how, their journeys kind of unfolded. So looking forward to that and meeting all you guys.
I love it. Afroz, how about you?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Afroz Ali. I'm based out of Chicago. I am a strategy director for an e-commerce consulting company. I have historically worked at one of the big three in an entrepreneurial type of way. So we actually did a lot of innovation for a lot of the Fortune 500 companies. I've also started 3 companies of my own in the past 10 years. And throughout all of that, I've worked with a number of different types of people. I've worked in all different size organizations, and I've wanted to explore empowerment as a overall philosophy in life and in the workplace. And I wanted to explore the source of that coming from Eastern cultures of balance, altruism, and I kind of stumbled upon servant leadership in the past few weeks that I thought was an interesting concept. And then lastly, I wanted to see how, feminine wisdom and the inherent kind of selflessness of a feminine culture historically has been of giving, and how that can actually play as a strength, with empowerment being a source of kind of strength in the workplace and in personal life. So that's my topic.
Cool. Welcome. Jared, how about you?
What's up, guys? Excited to be here. I just graduated from Syracuse and I'm now living in Boston. I actually got connected with Professor Kester last semester. I was hoping to do that, but I ended up having like the craziest semester, so it did. But now I'm ready to talking about like the state of the world in a sense that a lot of people have the negative view, and I want to interview sort of professionals or people who have made it despite the negativity and how they remain hopeful.
Very cool. We're going to run it back. This time started last semester and now finished this sucker. I love it. So it's awesome. Aaron, how about you? I think you're on mute. Let me see.
Roy, and I'm in Crystal Lake, Illinois. So I'm about 40 miles outside of Chicago. And my book, I work in a manufacturing factory. And so my book is going to be centered around people and culture, and also looking into how chief people officers of major brands and companies are kind of innovating and disrupting. And I really think the term human resources is a dinosaur. So looking at those key insights on how people are at the heart of companies, and then those companies that make them what matters are typically going to be the most successful, and how those insights might support, Main Street businesses and not just big brands. So I'm excited, and I have to let everybody know, Eric and I go back to the late 90s at Marquette.
We went to college
I'm
together.
really
Yeah,
excited
crazy.
to be on this
Crazy.
journey with
Yeah.
everybody.
Full circle. Awesome. Natalie, how about you?
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Sanchez. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I go to Marquette University. And so basically the book that I want to write is kind of an exploration of how grief, how creativity and creating just through various mediums can help us better navigate our journey of grieving and pain. And so it's going to be a little bit more autobiographical, but also hopefully serve as like a really helpful tool for people experiencing grief.
Cool. I love it. Very cool. Holly, how about you?
Hi, everybody. Holly Woods here. I am in the North Bay area of San Francisco and delighted to be here with all of you. I am going to write this book along with all of you, and I'm so excited to have this cohort. I've been wanting to write for a number of years about my work. I'm a transformational practitioner for more years than I'm actually willing to admit here, but several decades. And I've been doing purpose work, so helping people live into their greatest expression of purpose, passion, destiny, whatever you want to call it, what matters. And as I've studied sort of the scientific underpinnings of consciousness, I'm looking at how purpose varies by stages of consciousness. So I want to expose how purpose appears in our life over time. Part of why we're so confused about purpose in our early years is that it looks different than it would in your later years when you're more developed. And so that's why so many people like, what is purpose? Why can't I find it? I'm not living a life of meaning, and everybody, and so our lives really are depictions of the story of us living into our purpose. So
I love it. Very cool. Very cool. Mike, how about you?
Everyone, I'm surprised there's only one mic here.
I know, me too. I was like looking around.
Yeah, there's like 3 in my office. I work in mostly genocide and atrocities prevention, and my goal is to write a book that focuses on articulating a prevention-focused foreign policy, so getting us out of this kind of reactionary, militaristic approach to foreign policy and thinking more about long-term prevention strategies. So that's my hope, and I'm glad to be here and looking forward to actually writing this thing.
Yeah, awesome. We'll make sure that happens. Very cool. Zach, how about you, sir?
Hi, everybody. My name is Zach. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I used to be in the Marine Corps and joined the fire department, and got lost in a fire, and invented a product to help firefighters see each other in the dark. That part of our business started to take off, and then we're doing about close to $10 million a year in revenue now, and I wanted to kind of chronologize my entrepreneurial journey, and Eric gave me a much better idea, and that is focusing on the disabilities that I had growing up of ADHD, which is called multitasking when you get out of school and becomes a great attribute for entrepreneurs. And I want to highlight people that have perceived disabilities that actually turn into abilities. And I'd like to highlight my fellow Marines and firefighters that have had PTSD or other challenges, and how they turn those around to be great benefits, and kind of weave the story of my entrepreneurial journey through that pathway there.
Cool. I love it. Yeah. It's from disability to ability, right? Like the magical tools, superpowers. Awesome. Kyle, how about you, sir?
Hello, everybody. Kyle Garman. I'm based in Northern Virginia. It's great to hear all these fascinating topics and stories, and looking forward to working with everybody. I'm looking to write a book that makes the case for why entrepreneurship should be required curriculum for middle and high school students. It's based upon the work that I've done as a board member of the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, which is a nonprofit based in New York City. We've taught entrepreneurship to over 1 million students worldwide over the last 30 years, and we've learned a lot in that process. And in the context of the future of work, where AI is replacing jobs and everybody is an entrepreneur in the gig economy, I figured now's the time to kind of make the case, especially since my kids are also in that age and involved in entrepreneurship in their own ways. So looking forward to working with everybody and full steam ahead.
Cool. Lost. Love it. Love it. Rack, how about you, sir?
Hey guys, I grew up and work in the South Bay area, so like Mountain View, Palo Alto, if any of you are from around. I'm a product manager at a tech company, and I'm fascinated by how the software that we use at work has changed over the years. So like before you'd use like really terrible tools that you'd be forced to use. Now you can use things you actually like Dropbox and, Google Drive and Slack. And so I just want to not only talk about the history of enterprise software, but also offer insights into where I think that industry is going.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Brian, how about you, sir?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Glenn. Met Eric actually at the University of Chicago last year, or it might have been, was it last year or 2 years ago?
Yeah, last year.
At any rate, I've spent the last, I'd say, 6 or 7 years just in different businesses. And one of the things I'm just super fascinated with and writing my book about is the deference we give or the reverence we give to people we perceive to be in power, and how it literally just limits us as people. And we forget that, people started a company, people start movements, the politicians are people, and we all can be influenced and we all can accomplish a lot of stuff. So that's what I want to really dive in, and that's what I'm going to write my book about. So.
Cool. I love it. Very cool. Yep. It's a full circle, but good to see you back here a year later. So Laura, how about you? No, Laura? Lauren? Or
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. I am from Detroit, but I live in DC. And I haven't quite figured out what I want to write about yet. I have a couple projects that have been in the works already, and I'm trying to decide if I want to do that or start something new. But I'm excited to meet you all. A lot of the things that you're talking about are things that I'm interested in. So I'll be excited moving forward, small group, all that good stuff.
It's a fun thing too, isn't it? How, when you hear things, you're like, oh, Carolyn, I got to talk to you about this idea, and that connect. Part of the magic is connecting with other people, and we'll be doing more of that. We'll be doing some fun activities over the next month to kind of say, hey, you should meet this person or share this way. There is a lot of collaboration that happens that's really powerful. So it's awesome. Very cool. Lisa, how about you?
Alyssa, Eric said it exactly right. It's like Alyssa with no A. And yes, I live in Saratoga Springs, New York, which is upstate, about 3 hours from New York City. And I'm here in this crazy project to write a book about entrepreneurs who face great adversity or start from nothing and build great businesses regardless. And one of my huge motivations for doing this is I just learned that fewer than 8% of entrepreneurship books are written by women. So
really?
I'm out here to help change that. I might focus on just women. I might not. I don't know yet, but we're all going to evolve through this whole process.
Yes. It's a funny thing you say that too, is that someone asked me, they were like, I don't know if this is the perfect book topic. And they were like, I'm just really worried if this is the wrong book topic. And I was like, listen, you should not worry about that, because now I think I've worked with about 300 authors or so. I've had 3 of them keep their topics from the very beginning until the very end. So don't worry, it will evolve. You just don't know how yet. It'll change for sure. So do not fall in love with the topic. If you do find a topic, I'll put it on my wall of fame of the ones that don't change. So there you go. Tommy, how about you, sir?
Hey everyone, so my name is Tommy Sowers. I live in Chapel Hill. I'm a professor at Duke, and the book I want to write is Level Up, a definitive guide for changing your career and finally doing the thing that you want to do. So kind of unpacking a bunch of the choices I've made, but more importantly, people that that have leveled up, and how, when, why, who they got involved, and really the nuts and bolts to make it not a leap of faith, but an actual deliberate plan to do what you want to do.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. That title could stick. I think you might get a shot there. We'll see. Low odds, but maybe. So good to see you, Tommy. Ilkner, how about you?
Yep. Hi, I'm Ilkner. I'm currently in Queens, New York. I'm a front-end engineer at a not-for-profit called Understood, which is a not-for-profit for people with learning disabilities. And I would like to write my book on accessible technology. What what technologies are out there for people with disabilities and what are the best practices.
Cool. I love it. Very cool. Who else do I have here? Let's see. Maddie. Maddie is another repeat of mine. She was like, hey, do you know anyone? She's like, I think I want to take my second book through. So here we are.
Hi, guys. I'm Maddie. I live in New Jersey. Yes, I recently went through this process with Eric in September, I guess, is when I published my book.
Yep.
I wrote about how the fashion industry is changing, which is a topic I'm interested in, but also I kind of wove in little bits of my personal story. 2 years ago, after I graduated college, I had a massive stroke and was completely paralyzed. And so I've had to learn how to walk and do everything again. And the feedback I got from my last book is that people were really interested in those parts of my book. So I'm interested in kind of just exploring that and then also just kind of documenting my progress as I go.
Cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, good to have you back. 2 people who've done this already. Laura, I think Laura Y. I don't know if we can hear you. Maybe no? Maybe not? Well, how about Hillary then? Hillary, how about you, Hillary?
Hi, sorry I'm not on video
No
at the
worries.
moment, but I am from New York, or I'm living in New York City, and the book I'd like to write is working title The Parenting Arms Race, and I see it as a satirical memoir where it's really not just my story, but my husband's as well, and what I'd like to write the book I kind of would like to read, which is not just one person's perspective on parenting, but one that describes the very real challenges and at times battles, dilemmas when you and your spouse have very different parenting philosophies and all the negotiation that goes, on with that whether it's discipline, chores, homework, screen time, all of that good stuff.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Well, as a now 3-time parent who was having a disagreement about parenting tonight with my wife, I approve of this message. So, awesome. Well, did we miss anyone there? Did I miss anyone on the round table here? Awesome. Well, so I'm gonna walk through a few things with you guys now and try to sort of set the expectation of what's to come, because I think I can't remember who exactly said it. Maybe it was Val who said, like, I'm a little, or Denise too. I have some questions about whether this is all going to happen. It's a good idea. So we'll take you through a little bit of what to expect that's coming. So the truth is that, like, it is challenging to write a book at times, and there's this idea that it feels very isolated. And so I think that's one of the things that I've loved about this experience is it is, there's reason to have other people around you to help you finish this thing. And so part of it is whether it's me, whether it's your fellow, authors, whether it's your editor, we're all in this together to help you pull across the line. So I think a lot of people, when they think about a book, they get nervous because they attack it oftentimes the wrong way. They think that, like, it has to be this particular way. And in many ways, like, they think about what, like, the idea of writing a book is. You go off in a cave and you write all this stuff and then you come out with a magical manuscript and publish it. And it really doesn't work that way. I mean, the truth is like, most people, when they start, they do it alone. It's like very isolating. They've never done it before. They don't know how to do the process. They feel like they have to write the whole book. And so that can feel massive. They don't oftentimes have accountability partners. They don't also get feedback along the way. They just, like, write to this manuscript and then people tell them it's terrible. And then sometimes every one of us gets stuck. And so the idea behind this one was really conceptualized around what I saw a lot of successful author does. And that was they created this group of friends who were all writing books and met oftentimes to talk about their journeys and had help along the way. And so basically that's us. Like, we're going to be that group of friends, and we're going to be here to help each other. We're going to meet every week and these things. And now, some people will ask me, like, what if I don't show up one week or I watch the video? Is that bad? Listen, the truth is that just by having something that's going to be on your calendar every week for the next 20 weeks, like, that's going to be in the back of your head thinking, like, God, I should really do something or other. So there's a lot of paths to accomplish this, but no, part of this is designed to help you have accountability and succeed. We're going to get together every week for an hour. And most authors say on average, they spend about 2 to 4 hours a week, outside of it. But some weeks that's more, some weeks that's less. It just sort of depends a little bit. But we'll also do these monthly workshops. Wherever we have enough density, we'll do them in person. So New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Atlanta, we'll have enough people where we'll probably do these 5 monthly workshops in person. Otherwise, we'll kind of do these ones via Zoom kind of virtually as well. So 20 weeks, we're going to basically get everyone to have a manuscript, first draft manuscript to me by the end of October. And there will be targets along the way. So we'll kind of give you some milestones to hit. But remember, this is a very personalized journey. Sometimes people will, chip away every week. Other times you'll be more spiky. And sometimes you know who you are. You'll basically leave it all the end and you'll bust your tail over 5 days and come up with something. Like, we'll get you there if that's your case too. Don't worry. And you'll have help. Like, you'll have coaching from me, instructions all along the way, and having an editor. That has really been a big one too. Having someone reading your stuff along that way to give you feedback, but to also help you improve as you're going is huge. So that's kind of going to be this group of friends that we're going to do. And again, the biggest goal from these 5 months is not to finish a book, but to develop a first draft. All of you are going to finish a first draft manuscript by the end of October. Now, I think I was talking to Hillary today, and she was like, is that enough time to do it? What I always tell people is the biggest thing is you can do a first draft manuscript. Sometimes what people believe is it has to be good. And so the core thing to do here is lower your expectation of what that first draft is. It's just a first draft, and we're going to make it better. So remember, if you feel like, I don't know if I can do this, lower your expectations, lower the quality that you're going to do, because once we have a first draft, we will make it better, but it will never be good right away. It's going to take 4 or 5 kind of evolutions or revisions to make it into something that's publishable. So core thing, first draft, that's what we're doing together. And if you do that, you will definitely be able to succeed. So let me take you through a little bit of like how the journey is going to happen, because it is something that, oftentimes it can feel a little bit like, well, what is this going to look like? How is it going to play out? And so the goal here is to give you sort of a step-by-step guide where you sort of know how to keep yourself on track. Now, the first biggest thing to understand is we're all working on nonfiction books. So the core thing to know is that when you conceptualize what a nonfiction book is, it really is this collection of interesting and insightful stories tied together through the author's narrative and lessons. So what that means for you is really about 80% of your book is going to be driven by stories. Now, these are stories that will come from lots of places, but the stories really rule the day. Now, the other 20% is what I call the contribution, and these are the lessons and the teachings and the narratives, and that will pull those pieces together. So the core thing is that stories rule the day, and we're going to start there because what I've learned is the more we can focus on coming up with insightful and powerful stories, the better the entire rest of the book comes. And so I looked at a whole bunch of my prior author manuscripts that in their first draft were about 30,000 words on average to give you some data in terms of what these look like. You can actually see Franklin's book there, one of them I looked at. And so what I found like in these sort of data behind it is that on average, the story length of an author is about 750 words. So these are, think of it like a long blog post. So that sort of means you're going to write somewhere between 20 and 45 stories. So some of your stories may be short, like a 200-word story. Some of them may be long. I'll teach you a lot about how to write stories, but in general, a big portion of your book, about 25,000 words, will typically be stories. So those come from different places. Some of them are going to come from people you interview. Some of them may come from research. You may watch someone who gave a TED Talk and use that story they tell. And some of them will come from your own stories. Now that can change, right? Sometimes, people may have more of a memoir-y book where more of the stories or all of the stories can be their own. But in general, this gives you an idea a little bit about how to think about it. So the core thing is stories. Now, how do you write the stories? Well, you got to get them, right? And that's partially what we're going to start out by doing is structure this where the first month is really about starting to gather information, do some research, do some investigation, do some interviewing to be able to find the stories that you're going to write. So there's 3 main phases to this entire version, this entire sort of 20-week journey we have. The Get Smart phase, the Create Stories phase, and the first manuscript creation phase. Now, the core thing to do is we're going to starting next week for the first 4 weeks on this Get Smart phase. Now, the core thing to know is that really from this first sort of to make your book complete, you're going to have a mixture of these primary interviews, people you talk to in interview, as well as these secondary interviews, these research-driven interviews. So typically for the entire book, most people will do between 10 and 15 sort of primary interviews, maybe more. These are people you talk to and actually like pull information from them. And from that, you'll turn that into interview-driven stories. These may be 10, 15,000 words of interview-driven stories. You're also going to do some secondary interviews. And these are the types of research. It's not like traditional research, but more like going out and gathering, people telling their story on a podcast interview or telling something in a talk they've given, using that knowledge, which I gave you many of you for homework, to also turn into stories. These are going to be research-driven stories where you're going to pull things that people have already said in their own voice and use those as stories. the core thing that we're going to do this first month is we're going to work to schedule some of these interviews so you have people to talk to and learn from. In addition, we're going to work on identifying these secondary interviews, people who are saying things already that might include. So that's really the goal of this first month, is to help give you stuff to write. Right? We're pulling that stuff together so you have plenty of interesting things to write. From there, we go into the 10-week phase, 2.5 months of really just writing raw content. We call it the story writing phase, but really what your goal is to write stories to become a better storyteller. And that's one that your editor can be really, really helpful on. They're going to give you feedback along the way. So for you, you're going to go out and write stories. Some of these may be short, some may be long, but generally speaking, that's where we're going to be writing. And you'll be amazed over those 10 weeks at how your story writing ability will improve. It's dramatic. In fact, the first stories you write are going to be pretty mediocre, to be totally honest, and they'll get better as you learn tools and techniques to do it, but that's where the richness really comes in. So from there, your goal over these sort of 10 weeks is to create about 20,000 words of first draft stories. Now that seems like a lot, but it really isn't, because it's first drafts. These are not like polished pieces. These are things where you write them and then set them aside. You don't rewrite until the very end part. So you'll find some themes and you'll have some checkpoints along the way with your editor where you'll talk about where you're at. From there, we go into the process of actually creating your manuscript. So this process is different than you may think. It's not like we sit down and just sort of write a manuscript, a 25,000 word manuscript, but it's actually we build a manuscript. We take all the stories and the learnings we've had, and we basically use existing book structures and fit our content into it. It's called building a manuscript from sort of a chapter template, and it's super duper powerful. The key thing that we'll do, though, is in between this sort of create stories and get smart phase and the manuscript phase is you and I'll have another chat. We had our topic chats talking about your book topic. But the real thing is you don't exactly know how you're going to position your book until you've done sort of these first 14 weeks. And so somewhere in between week 13 and week 16, we'll sit down and spend about a half an hour going in and figuring out, all right, how do you actually position this book in the marketplace? And so good books are what I would describe as they are simple, but not easy. And so we got to find what you're going to position with your book. All of your books will evolve. We just don't exactly know how yet. And so don't worry about table of contents. Don't worry about structure yet. Really just create interesting content, and then we'll figure out how we position it at that point. The goal of this kind of first draft manuscript by the end of October, 25,000 words. It'll be structured into chapters, so we'll teach you how to use templates to do that one. You'll have an introduction, and then it'll be ready for feedback. And that's really the goal of this, is to help you sort of figure out where you take this draft from there. There's lots of different ways to get there. And again, what you'll see is there's sort of different ways that different authors take. Some people will take the sort of structure, and every week they'll be chipping away. They'll do 2,000 words a week religiously along the way. That's about 20 to 30% of people will attack that way. Now, that's great. If that's your style, awesome. It's a habit and you do it. My process is not that way. I'm more of what you call an episodic writer, which is sort of spiky. Like some weeks if I'm inspired, I'll stay up till 5 a.m. and write. And other weeks I'll do nothing, but like that's kind of my style. And as a parent, it kind of works with my life a little bit. So that's a style that works too. And so you may not work some weeks on your book and other weeks you may, and that will certainly work. The third path, and you'll probably know who you are, is you'll basically leave a lot of it behind, and the last week you'll sort of push on through. So whatever your path is, we'll learn that along the way too and figure out how to adapt your targets, your goals to that one. But there's no one right way to do it. So that's the core thing that we're doing. Our goal here is between now and sort of the end of October to get every one of you to have a first draft. Now, the second thing that I learned, and this is a big one here, is that many of the people who were starting a book, they basically struggled because they didn't know if they finished that first draft, would it actually turn into anything? And so one of the core things that I had to figure out how to do is help everyone have a path to publishing their book. And for those of you who are familiar too much with the sort of publishing industry a little bit, it's funky. I mean, it's a challenging industry, and you know, the traditional publishing world is really in a lot of flux these days. You really do need a very large audience for the most part to get a traditional publisher to sign you, even if you can. And if you do, they wind up having a pretty onerous deal where they own the book and they give you a piece of royalties. And so we tried to find up something that was a little different. So we started working with a publisher called New Degree Press and came up with an interesting model that works for authors. Now, again, this is not required, but just so you know, this is an option for you, which again, I think is a really great thing for authors to know, that they can do this as a tool to get their work out there. The approach is called pre-order publishing. And what it's built on the premise of is a little bit like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, where you start to build community around your book even before it's done. And that powerful mechanism is really what today's most successful authors do. They really build momentum before the book is even done. That's how you wind up building much more kind of support behind your book. And so this is sort of how it works. The goal of this is sort of after you get done your first draft to help you put together a pre-sale campaign, a video, the title, some materials about your book, and get these out there. And so it is really powerful, and it actually really works quite well. So the idea is basically to enable you to put your book out there in November timeframe. Once your book is sort of, again, you have a first draft that's on the process. It really does enable you to connect with your local community and like people you already know, because they don't want to be sold your book. They want to be part of the journey. And so that's what's important here. At the same time, when you pre-sale your book, you use those profits from the book sales to cover the book itself. So the production of your cover designers, your editors, your layout. So the nice part about this model is you own the book completely and all the rights and profits to it. You just use the profits from the first few sales to cover your book in that way. So the way this process works, just to give you a picture of it, you'll start by kind of identifying the title and develop sort of a stub cover in this way. You'll put together a video about you and why this book is important so people know what they're buying. You'll also then go out and kind of tell the story of your book. You'll write this in a way that makes the case for why you wrote this and why it matters. And then lastly, you'll go out and help people buy it. And so you'll actually be selling, for the most part, signed pre-order copies of your book. And it works really well. Again, this is sort of what a campaign looks like. And we just had 21 authors do it, and all 21 of them succeeded in their campaigns. And the way it works is, again, the goal here is to sell 100 signed copies and use those to fund the cover designers, the editors, the layout work for your paperback and your ebook. You can also use the same process to sell more and cover your audiobook, to sell more and cover a translated book if you want to translate in another language, or sell more and do a hardcover book. It's a really clever model. Again, it's not required, but I like everyone to know they have this as an option because it means the work you're doing has a place to go. There's lots of different ways to do it, but it certainly works. 21 of 21 authors that just finished this last month succeeded in it in their campaigns, and most of them were able to fund beyond it. The biggest part behind all of it, really, and this is sort of what drives all successful authors that I've learned, is you have to create community and momentum much earlier behind your book. Again, the book itself is great, but more importantly is getting people to believe in the mission that you care about. So that's what this process does. Whether you decide to go with this route or your own, the pre-sale campaign is really critical to it. So a couple things, like, again, it's optional, it's not required, but it is the way that traditional publishers today can try to drive momentum for their bigger authors. And if you decide you don't want to pre-sale your book, it's not what you want to do, you can also pre-launch it, meaning you can get people excited behind it and you can cover the costs on your own. Those are different options that people have. Again, the core thing to do is once we sort of flip into the second half, you'll start the publishing activities. You'll work on revisions and additional editing. You'll work with a professional cover designer. You'll do layouts. You'll do marketing, and you'll really build your campaign to succeed. So the big core here is, like, you know, I want to have every one of you have the opportunity to have a book in your hand come April 2020. And so that's what this is designed to do, give you guys a community to do it and make sure you know there's a pathway for you to do it. So I talked a lot, and I know I talked fast. So I'll pause for a quick second. If there's any general questions, otherwise I'm happy to answer like individual questions offline or anything, but I'd just like to give everyone kind of a picture of what's coming. And then again, the second half, should you decide to continue, is the option for you. So questions, anyone, or general questions you want answered? Mike.
So I really like the model where you pre-sell the book. I think that's great. I'm just wondering how many of the authors that you have sell the books just online or actually get them in some stores? Like, how does that part of it work?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So today there's only one national bookseller, which is Barnes & Noble, but they operate in kind of a franchise model where they have a few titles that are national. And so I would say, for example, at Georgetown and at GW, we have the relationships with the bookstores where they cover the books locally. Most authors that in their local community will go and get their book covered there. So I'd say about 80% of authors will find a bookstore that's in their local area to sell their book. In terms of getting national distribution, it's rare. I mean, you either are a really big name or it's sort of more on a case-by-case basis of which bookstores you get into. But certainly it's doable. Literally, you walk in and say, hey, would you like to cover my book? And they're like, give me the ISBN number. And assuming that they want to do it, they will cover it for you in that way. So yeah, it's a common thing that people do. Other questions? All right, cool. So
I'm wondering, I have one question.
Yeah.
How do you go from first draft to final version of a manuscript? What would that process look like, and also what would the cost be for that?
Yeah, so that's included in the publisher model. That's how it all fits into the editor and stuff like that. But the model sort of like, basically what'll happen to you is you'll start your first draft where you'll get it to me and I'll get you some feedback on it usually. Your editor will as well. And then essentially what you do is you'll have 4 revisions until you actually go to press, typically 4 or 5 sometimes. The first one is like your first draft feedback. You get a bunch of structural feedback, what to change, what to evolve. And then you basically, in about a month, you go out and put together sort of your second iteration of it. At that point, you ship it out to a series of advanced readers, typically somewhere between 6 and 10 advanced readers who will read, you know, technical pieces of it, whatever it is, and get feedback there, and you incorporate that in your third version. And at that point, you get it to your copy editor, and they wind up, you know, editing it further, and then you make those changes, and then that's what goes to press. So there's at least 4 sort of revisions you have before it's publishable. It takes, you know, a number of steps with a lot of fingers and hands touching it to make it from mediocre into something really good. The best thing you can say when you read your book, you're like, wow, I can't believe I wrote that. And you sort of did, but you had other help along the way to make it make it good. But it's typically about a 3.5-month process from the first draft into a finished form based on sort of feedback along the way. Does that make sense? No? All right.
Hey, Eric, it's Kyle. I've got a quick question. On the pre-order process, are people ordering it in advance of the book being publishable? Is that the idea?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you're selling it basically. The idea really is it's usually people that are in your community already, their circles around you, and those people are participating as well. So when people, you know, buy your book before it's out, the cool part is you'll actually survey them of which cover that you want to use. You'll include them in the acknowledgments of your book. You'll do a lot of things that make them a part of the process. It's really, really neat. I mean, of these these recent authors, I got to vote on which cover I wanted them to choose. I got to vote on what I wanted for the subtitle. So it creates really a dynamic relationship. And then when the book comes out, they're your champions. I mean, they're out there helping you, getting you, booking you speaking gigs and all that sort of stuff. So that's really the core of the model, is they become part of the journey with you.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, so why don't we run with the last bit of this here? We don't have a ton of time, so I'm just going to take you through this last part. We're going to spend the last few minutes in a little workshop exercise. And again, usually it'll be more, but in this case, I'm going to break you guys up into little rooms, and we're going to do a little exercise called, basically what we're going to call it the working title workshop. And so what I want you guys to do is I'm going to break you up, and I want you to talk about your book and see if you can brainstorm working titles. So we'll only spend about 5 minutes. There'll be 3 of you, so you'll have to go quickly. But dive in, talk about your book, see if you can brainstorm a better working title, and then we'll come back together in just a few minutes. So I'll break you guys up, and we'll see you guys back here in just about 5 minutes. Should be a button to say join room at the top if you don't see it, but there should be one for all of you. Aaron and Laura, there should be a button to join rooms if you see. I think even on the iPhone it has one if you guys are on your phones. There should be a button that says join room. There you go. Okay. Hillary, I don't know if you don't have a button on yours, it might be, are you joining from the web or from the app?
I'm just joining from the web.
So you might need to log out and launch the Zoom app, because that's the only way I can move you into a room. You have to have the app going, otherwise it just doesn't let us do that one.
Okay, I'll try.
So just duck out, and there's a little app icon to install. This time install it, and it should let you jump right in. All right, sorry, I guess we're coming back here. Awesome. All right. Well, helpful to start to share book topic titles. Anyone come up with any much better titles now after sharing theirs? Awesome. All right, so we'll keep doing these like little sessions where part of the magic of this one is you're going to be able to engage with other authors, ask questions, share feedback along the way. So it is part of this powerful thing. Again, people will sometimes say, hey, I can't make a session, or whatever it is, or do I need to come to the sessions? A lot of the stuff that we'll do is share, we'll help, we'll give feedback, and we'll help one another along the way. So certainly love to have you attend, but don't feel like if you can't, don't feel bad. So, last couple things here, and then I'm going to get you guys out of here on time and on schedule. What next? Well, key things. Number one, next week is we're really going to kick off the Get Smart phase. So two things that I want you guys to do. Number one, spend some time this week thinking about people in your network who might be helpful to speak with. Who could be some early friendly interviews you could talk to? Next week, we'll talk about how to reach out to them. And the second thing is try to find 10 sort of the starts of what we call secondary interviews. These talks, interviews, panels, oftentimes they're on YouTube or podcasts that have interesting or helpful stories for you. And bring those. We're going to talk a little bit about how to start to put that to work. The core thing, is just to start yourself getting ready. Remember, this first month is discovering, identifying, researching, getting yourself ready to go. And do not stress out. Like, this is going to be fun. I know it may seem like I can't believe I'm doing this, but you can. And remember, it's a journey together. It's totally doable. You're going to have, an hour a week and then a couple hours outside of it that's very spiky, different paths to get there. You have help along the way. I mean, having an editor took the success rate from about 50% of my authors to 90% or so, just by having someone who's going to read feedback and give you time all the way, as well as me. And this will work. I mean, no matter what, you can get through this one, and I'm here to help you. So the last things, we're going to do weekly sessions, monthly sessions when we can. Lynn will be reaching out to you tomorrow about dues. So this goes to your editor. If you have questions about editor, do I need an editor? Listen, it's $25 a week for 16 weeks to have an editor. Trust me, you're welcome. So you'll have to put in your dues by June 14th. It all goes to your editor. You'll meet them July 1st. That's when you'll begin working with them. And then if you want to put things in your calendar, if you're someone who sets targets, 20,000 words of first draft stories by September 15th is kind of our target for the stories phase. And then the second milestone, 25,000 word first draft by October 28th. And lastly, this is going to be you guys. All of you guys are going to have a book in your hand. So let's do this thing. We're going to start books together. So excited to see you guys. I'll see you all next week, and we will make some magic together. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, all.